Welcome to Ivy Lane Home. Today's furniture project is this massive piece. It's like 80 inches long. I don't know if it's a dresser, credenza, sideboard. I think it would look really great in an office or a fabulous entertainment center. I got it from my friend Sabina. She's had it in her garage for over a year, and she was like, hey, do you want a restoration project? I said, sure. So Jeff and I went and picked it up, and this thing is a beast. I think it weighs probably a minimum of 150, maybe 175. It is really heavy. But it's a really cool piece. It's a brutalist piece style. The closest she could find, the only thing that's stamped underneath it is Canada. So the closest she could find, she did some research when she got it, was a Tobago was the possible manufacturer. So she found a listing that was super similar. The only thing that was different was the hardware. So I think it's pretty close. Now this piece is in really rough shape. And so thankfully the drawers and the doors are in good shape, but the casing, the top is not good. I've got some bubbled veneer. And then on the sides, I've got damage. Underneath on the plinth, I have damage. There's a big chunk missing out of part of the case. And so that will have to be replaced or repaired. And so I've got a lot of epoxy wood putty in my future. But I think it can be restored. So if I have to, I can re-veneer the top. But I think it's worth it because it's a really cool piece. So let's go. So here's some more close-ups. You can see it has fabulous storage. It has 3 really wide drawers, and then it has those brutalist doors that open to reveal 3 cubby-style pull-out drawers. So tons of storage, but as you can see, that top is rough. I don't know what they did to it. This is probably like a packing tape residue, so I'm not sure if it was in storage or what the situation was, but it's a mess. But you know, it's a beautiful piece, and I love brutalist style. They kind of called it that checkerboard style, but it's a really cool piece and one I think is worth restoring. So here's my daughter, Kate. We're going to get it cleaned up. She's working with me this summer, so you'll hear in the background a sander going on sometimes behind it. It's because she's working her own pieces to flip this summer. But I'm going to start on this area. I don't know what this was, if this was wax or what, but I thought we'll start with taking it off, and that was very satisfying to take that off. I decided I'm going to strip the casing, so I'm going to strip the top and the sides and the base. I'm using Smart Strip. This is by Dumond. It's a great non-toxic stripper. You can find it on Amazon or your local Sherwin-Williams. I am going to take the doors off. This had a hex screw on it, which is unusual. I'm kind of thinking it's probably dated based on the drawers with the slide outs, the rollers. It's probably in the 80s is kind of what I'm dating it to. So I'm going to take the doors off because I don't plan on stripping those. I think the drawers and the doors are in good enough condition. I'm going to try to do a gentle restoration. Because can you imagine trying to strip all those tiny little pieces of wood on the doors? That would be a nightmare. But I'm going to try to get away with just a gentle restoration. Once the stripper's set for about an hour, I'm going to come back with my carbide scraper. I'm going to scrape off as much as I can, and then I'll come back with some acetone and some 4/0 steel wool and get off as much of the stripping residue as possible. My goal is to get down to raw, and then I have less sanding to do after. Once that's had a chance to dry, the next day I'm ready to come back and do my sanding. So I'm going to do 80 grit, going over it with my Festool. I like to kind of do a hard sand with my 80 grit first, and then I'll move on to other grits. So on the top, I had some veneer bubbling. It wasn't super obvious from, I tried to get a good shot of it. You can kind of see it better there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score it with a blade, and then I'm going to put some glue over it, wood glue, and then I'm going to try to get it in underneath some of those areas. Then I'll sand it in. And then once it's kind of sanded in, then I'm going to make sure it's set by using a hot iron just to kind of glue everything down and see if I can get it that way. Looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to sand it smooth and see how it looks. I'm just doing a gentle restoration on the drawers, but you can tell I had some scuffs and some dings, and you can see a long scrape on this one. So I'm going to try to use a steam iron to lift up the wood grain to kind of pop it up so that I can minimize it. So I don't know that I can completely get rid of it since I'm not stripping it down to raw, but after steaming it, I'll sand it. You can see the pattern on the type of, cloth that I use. I probably need to just use a cotton cloth, not a microfiber, but it's coming. You can tell it's really pulled it up some. So I'm going to do a couple more rounds of it and see if I can get it up a little bit more, and then I'll move on. I noticed with the sanding for this particular pattern, it was difficult to try to stay in the line. So I'm just going to use some painter's tape so that I can go right over that line without messing up the pattern, because this is a checkerboard pattern. So I'm doing 220 grit. When you're doing a gentle restoration, they recommend 150, 180. I'm just doing 220 this particular time. I'm just trying to kind of knock off a little bit of the top coat, so etching up the surface so you can have good adhesion when you go to put on your gel stain. So after that, you can see that line really came up pretty good. I can see it just a little bit right there, but I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to do the same process on the doors. I do have a lot of areas that need to have the gouges steamed out. So I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to sand them, then I'm going to clean them, then I'm going to steam them, and then I'll clean them off again. I'm using a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. That's part of the protocol that I use with General Finishes for their toning, is they always have you sand it. Well, they have you clean it, 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water, and then sand it. I reverse it. I usually sand it first. I guess I clean it and then I sand it, and then I clean it with the denatured alcohol. That way it preps it right before I apply the gel stain.
So for the toning, I'm using nutmeg. I like this one. This seems to do really good. It has kind of brings a brightness to the wood, and so it's my favorite to use probably when I'm doing gentle restorations. Now for the case, I'll use a different color because it'll need to be darker since I'm stripping down to raw. But if I'm going over an existing finish, I really like the nutmeg. I've not tried it, but there's another one that's similar and it's called Candlelight, and so I might try that one too sometime. This piece had so many problems with the veneer. So I'm using Mohawks. This is their wood epoxy stick. It's a two-part system, so you're just going to cut it off what you need, and you're going to knead it together until it's a uniform color, and then you can start to apply it. Now, I don't know. I'm not very good at applying this. Some people use a special like little putty knife or an epoxy knife, which I need to probably find a better tool because I tend to leave it. I think I leave it too proud. So then it makes it a little bit more difficult to sand. And so sometimes I don't know if it's the weather or what, but it's just sometimes it's a brand new tube, but it was kind of hard to mix up. So hey, if you have a tip for me, you can leave it in the comments. But I'm going to apply it. There's some areas that already had some of the lighter wood epoxy. I'm going to go over it with the darker and see if I can kind of get it to blend in a little bit better so I can have fewer repairs later. Now I'm ready to sand everything smooth. Again, you want to make sure that you get it smooth because you will see it. There's times where I think I got it, but because it's brown, it does kind of blend in. So you have to make sure that it's sanded really smooth. This area was completely missing, so I'm going to do a second coat on this, a second application. So I'll kind of form it, and I'm trying to form a corner because it was literally gone. So put some painter's tape on it, then I'm going to clamp it up to really create that corner with some boards, and that'll help me. I'm going to do the same process on the doors. I'm going to do the nutmeg. I'll just simply apply it with a chip brush, and then I'm going to pull back all of the excess with a lint-free cloth. I'm staining the top. I'm starting with some mineral spirits, and then I'll follow up with my gel stain. Now, this was over a holiday weekend. I stopped on Friday, came back on Tuesday, and I thought I was ready to stain. But when I put the stain on, I was like, why is that all blotchy? And I realized I had only sanded to 80 grit. I had not sanded 120 and 180. So I had to take it all off real quick with mineral spirits, sand it back down, and then I reapplied the gel stain. So, it's okay. People make mistakes. You can just take it right back off and start over. So thankfully it only done the top, and so I was able to sand down the sides and the base with the correct grits, and then I was able to move on to the staining process. I'm using General Finish's Antique Walnut. It's a little bit browner than the Nutmeg. The Nutmeg has a little bit of orange in it, so it's a little bit brighter, but it's a really beautiful color too. Now I have to do all the ingrain painting on all those areas that I fixed. So the first thing is putty doesn't look like wood. So I'm going to go through with a razor blade, and I'm just going to make some notches in it just to make it kind of look a little bit like wood. And then on the sides, it had so many problems, I decided to start with the toner first. So I applied the toner. I'm going to let it dry. Now I'm using Blend All sticks. These are also by Mohawk. This is just kind of like you're painting on the grain. So you start light and then you move up. And even every time you do a layer, you're going to seal it with their easy vinyl sealer. And so it takes about a minute or so to dry, and then you can come back and do another coat. But you're just kind of tricking the eye to make it look like it's wood, because this is wood putty. And so it's not wood, but you got to kind of paint in the grain, and it's something I've been practicing on the last couple years. And so sometimes it goes really good, and sometimes I'm like, oh, that doesn't look as good as I want it. But sometimes you just have to keep going and practicing, and eventually you'll get it, or you'll get it to a point where you're happy with it, and then you can just move on. Something else I like to do is after I do my initial repair, sometimes I'll come back through and do another coat of gel stain over it. And so that kind of helps blend in some of my repairs. So that's another little tip that you could try too if you're struggling with some of your repairs.
So the top didn't work. You know that one area on the top that I had tried to fix, glue, iron down. Once I put the sealer on it, I thought it'd be fine because it was an oil-based. Because, you know, sometimes water-based lifts things, but it just didn't look right. And so I tried to iron it back down, sand it a little bit. It's just not right. So I'm not going to move forward with it at this point, trying to fix anymore. I have a sheet of walnut veneer that I was going to use on a different project. And so I'm going to re-veneer the top and see how it goes. Now, I haven't had very good experiences with veneer in the past. I've had a few. I had one big mistake and then some other ones, smaller projects that were a little bit more successful, but this one's peel and stick. And so the biggest part is just trimming it so it looks really good. So let's go to plan B here.
So this is peel and stick veneer, and it's in walnut. So I'm going to measure it, and I'm going to try to trim it. I recommend about a 1/2 inch all the way around. So I'll trim it and then attempt to adhere it. I was using a box knife, but you can really just cut this with some scissors, which I found out later. So it made it a lot harder on myself. But really, literally, just a box knife or scissors can cut it. It's obviously a little bit harder to cut on the cross grain. It's a lot easier to cut when you're going with the grain. So I thought I might use some dowels, but really, you really don't need them unless you're doing like contact cement. And so I started with the dowels, but I really didn't feel like I needed them. So I just adhered it and then I rolled it back, and you can see I started pulling out the back. Now, unfortunately, I had it too far over to the left. So when I started pulling it out, I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't have enough clearance on the front corner. So I had to pull it back up real quick and try to re-adhere it. Well, I made a big mistake when I did that I didn't see until later when I saw the footage. And what happened was when I pulled it back up, it pulled up some of that loose veneer. You can see it right here. See that? And so I didn't realize it at the time until, like I said, I went back to edit this footage because I thought, why is there a bubble there? And I just thought it was going to settle down, and it really wasn't that bad. But I tell you what, as I refinished this, as I did the stain and then the top coat, you can see there's a bubble in that area. So I didn't know it at this point that it was there. So I just keep working it out, getting all the bubbles out, and I thought it was fine, trimmed it up, but you'll see later what I end up having to do. Trimmed it with a box knife. I really would like to get a router. I think a router would be a lot quicker and cleaner. So this is just messy, trying to do it with a razor blade. Now, obviously, it's a lot easier going with the grain. That end grain, you'll see in a few minutes, it's difficult. So if you have any suggestions, I've tried. I had a little veneer cutter that they recommended at Woodcraft. It didn't work very good for me. So I think a router might be the easiest. I just don't have one. So you can see the end grain, it's just really difficult because you don't want to tear into the wood grain because then that's going to affect where the seam is. So you have to be really careful. So I tried to kind of not cut it quite too close on this part because then I can sand smooth. And if I give a little bit of clearance, I can still sand it smooth, and then I can get it really tight and flush against the edge there. I'm just going to give it a nice sand. I'm doing probably, if I'm doing 180 or 220, just dust it off. And then I'm going to stain it the same color. Actually, this particular time I decided I'm just going to throw in about a teaspoon of nutmeg. I used antique walnut before, and this time I just wanted to brighten it up just a tad. So I put a little bit of nutmeg in there. And so you see I have the mineral spirits down that's acting as kind of like my slip coat, and then I'll put the stain down. On the doors, I had the wrong needle in. I thought I had 1.5 and I looked back and I actually had a 2.0. So you can see it just sprayed way too heavy. And so I had to go back through and sand everything smooth because I had drips, not just on the doors, I had some on the body too. So I had to go back through, sand everything smooth. You can see the wood grain goes different directions. So this took a little bit of time. So I tried to do another coat. This time I tried to brush it, but it still didn't look amazing. So after I brushed it, let it dry, I came back and did another light sand, and then I did go ahead and use the correct tip in my spray gun, and I did another coat, and it turned out really good. I always let my gel stain dry at least 12 hours, and then I come back and do my top coat. I'm using an oil-based top coat in a warm flat. Last step I'm going to do is clean my drawers. So I'm going to clean them with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. And you can see I'm using a new to me product. This is Artisan Furniture Wood Balm. It has flax seeds, beeswax, and orange oil. And so Jesse from Arlington Woodworks, he sent this to me and to try. You can see it's a veteran-owned company, and I really liked it. A lot of times I use Danish oil, but I thought I'll give this a try, and it was really worked well. So sometimes, Danish oil just leaves a little bit of greasy residue on there. So this one you're just supposed to apply with a cloth, and then you let it set for about 10-15 minutes, and then you come back and you buff it. So I did let it set, and this, you can see there's hardly any residue, and that was right after it. This drawer had been done about 10 minutes. I went ahead and still buffed it, and there was no greasy residue. So really cool. I was impressed. You should check them out. I'll have their products linked in the description down below. So here's that area that got bubbled up. And so I just waited, and I waited to the next day, and you can hear it. Do you hear that little difference? So I made a tiny score in it with a razor blade, and I'm using just a dry heat iron, and I went over it a few times, and I'm weighting it down to see if I can get it any more flush. So after my attempt to fix it last night, it actually looks worse this morning than it did yesterday. So took it all off, and I'm just going to try again. I feel like I can justify the cost because it is a high-end piece, but who can mess up peel and stick veneer? Me. So, I'm just going to try it again. I'm going to go to Woodcraft and see if they have some more veneer. But I feel like I also need to prove it to myself that I can do this because I've had so many problems with veneer. But send some prayers because I might need them. Here we go. I'll tape off the body because I don't want to mess any of that up because that's already been stained and sealed. So I'll tape all that off, and then I'm going to scrape as much as I can. And just to get a really good surface, I'll sand it, and then I'm going to use some wood filler in that area that I had so many problems on. Well, I want it to be really, really smooth. So then after that, I'm going to add a little bit of glazing Bondo just to make sure I have a really smooth surface for the veneer. This time I gave a little bit more of a perimeter around the entire thing. So I am going to try to line it up with that edge, and that'll maybe hopefully help me to do less trimming on that part. I've got my little J roller and I'll start smoothing it out. It was going really good, and then I got down to the end part, and for some reason there were some bubbles and they would not go down. So you see I have some super glue with some activator, and I'm just trying to get it to lay flat. I tried all kinds of things. I have a rounded off piece of wood, I have my J roller, and there's just some areas that they won't go down.
Well, today has been the Mondayest of Mondays. I am trying part 2 of the veneer, and you're never gonna believe what happened. Let me show you. So I have glazing Bondo on this. I don't know if that had caused some problems with the adhesion, but this is peel and stick. This should stick, but you can tell, or I can tell, it's not sticky right here. And so I'm wondering if that's my problem, is the glazing Bondo. I had more on this side than I did on the other, because the other side looks great. Don't seem to have any problems down there. And I had glazing Bondo down there is the weird thing. But this, like when I feel it, there's no sticky. So I don't know. I'm going to try to pivot and use a different adhesive. I'm so frustrated. I've mentioned that this is a Learn With Me channel, that I'm not an expert, obviously. So I put an SOS out to my Instagram friends, and several of them did mention contact cement. So I went to Lowe's and picked it up, and I watched some YouTube videos. And this is what the guy recommended. It's DAP. This is called Weldwood, and he recommended a mohair roller, but I couldn't find a mohair. So the closest I could find was velour. And so I'm going to use that. And what I'm going to do is he recommended 2 coats. Now, obviously I already have peel and stick adhesive on here. So I went ahead and put a layer of shellac, clear shellac, over the glazing Bondo, just in case that was my issue with the adhesion. I don't know. But I put a layer of that down, and then they recommended in the video to do 2 coats. So I'm gonna put it down on each layer and then let it set for 15 minutes. And then I'll do a second coat, let it dry for 15 minutes. Now, the guy said that contact cement only sticks to contact cement. I didn't know that. So that's good. So I'm gonna put the dowels in there so that it doesn't, the veneer doesn't hit the top. Keep it separate until it's ready to actually go down. So let's try it.
I'll decant some of the contact cement, roll it on, brush it on the areas that I can reach, and then I'm going to see if I can press it down and see if I can actually get it. I'm trying a combination of heat with the super glue and activator to get those little areas to settle down.
Are you waiting for a veneer update this morning? Here it is. I used the contact cement, and then I had lots of bubbles still, so I tried some super glue with an activator, and you can see all those bubbles are still there. So a lot of us thought that the Bondo was the problem, but if you'll look down here, I have a lot of Bondo as well, and it adhered just fine. So what I decided to do is I'm actually going to do a video, and I'm going to send it to the veneer company and see if they can help me troubleshoot it, because obviously I'm better at taking off veneer than I am putting it on. I'm going to step away because I'm frustrated. I need a win, so I'm moving on to another project, and I'll let you know what happens.
So here's the video I sent to the veneer company. This is a different vantage point. This is the vertical, and you can see the spot that I have the problems with the most. You can see I'm rocking along good. Everything's looking really good until I get about 3/4 of the way down. And then there's just some bubbles that would not go down. And the weird thing is there was no Bondo right there. I don't know why they wouldn't go down. And so I sent this to him. I actually talked to him even before I sent it to him, but I talked to him. He said, okay, what's going on? I explained the situation, what I had on the substrate. And so he just said, sometimes peel and stick can be tricky. And he offered to send me another sheet of veneer to try again, and which I was super thankful for. And he gave me some tips. So the first one he said is seal the substrate. Make sure that it's dust-free, seal it. So he recommended either sanding sealer, poly. I did shellac. I think you could even do paint. Just make sure that it's sealed. And then the second one, I asked him specifically, should I use a J roller? And he said, well, with peel and stick, it's better to use a rounded off piece of wood because that way you get better, adhesion. And then the last tip was no water-based stain because you don't want any more water in it. Use solvent-based.
No bubbles. Finally.
So all that, and I finally have the veneer down. And so now all I have to do is trim it, restain it, and seal it, and I should be good to go. All right, let's look back at the before. I didn't realize when I was taking these videos that this was going to be such a pain. My title was This Almost Broke Me, and it almost did. It shouldn't have been that hard, but sometimes I just learn a lot in the midst of this. So after all that work, here is the finished product. What do you think? Wow, it took 3 attempts, but there's the top. And I think it looks really good. Is it 100% perfect? No, but it is so close. I think the doors and the drawers, I only did a gentle restoration on those and then sealed them, and I think they look really good. So, I love this style. I think it's beautiful. It's very contemporary, very modern, but yet kind of that vintage throwback. So, I love it. It really took me a long time to get here. I had to do a lot of the repairs. You can see on this side, I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of repairs I had to do on the plinth and on the side. And again, it's not 100% perfect, but it's a lot better than where it was. So enjoy some of these videos and I'll come back at the end. So here's the top without any decorations on it. I think it looks really good. I love the color. There's still a couple imperfections on it that I'm not 100% happy with, but it's so close. So I'm going to try veneer again. I think next time I'll try just regular veneer with maybe contact cement and see how that one goes for me. I think the key for me is going to be making sure my substrate is sealed. So this was a tough one, but it's done. And I'm glad. So thanks so much for hanging with me. Tell me what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching.